Aidan Grogan joins me now, who's a history PhD candidate at Liberty University and a contributor with Young Voices. Aidan, good to have you on the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
So tell me about this. I get into these a bit. I try not to make people's eyes glaze over, and I don't have the kind of background that you do on this. But America needs to replace its population. So do other countries. There are countries like China and Japan that seem to be in real trouble in this regard. Are we headed, is the whole world headed for what you've described as a demographic winter?
Well, 2/3 of people worldwide live in countries with sub-replacement fertility rates. So the average woman in these countries is having fewer than 2.1 children. So this Japanification process, where you have an inverted population pyramid with more old people than young people, is going to replicate itself throughout the world. The Lancet medical journal projects that 95% of countries are going to have below replacement fertility by 2100. So it's not a question of if, but when, and we're likely to see it in the United States later this century, depending on the immigration scenario.
Okay, and I guess the question comes down to, are we overestimating that this is going to be a problem, or with technology and other tools, automation, can we make this not as much of a problem? Should we fix it? And if we should fix it in some way, what's the mechanism by which we fix this problem?
So AI and automation can certainly help with productivity and knowledge creation, but the problem with that solution is that robots don't buy things, nor do they pay taxes. So the biggest problem with depopulation is that you just don't have the financial resources to provide things like health care, pensions, and Social Security to your larger elderly population. And this is why reforming entitlements is key throughout this century for policymakers and for those who study this issue. But in democratic countries, old people tend to vote more than young people, and it's unlikely that old people are going to vote for political parties or candidates who pledge to revoke the generous benefits that they were promised. So that's a very large challenge that we face.
In fact, am I wrong, Aidan? I've kind of concluded loosely that older people tend to vote their self-interest, which, most people vote their self-interest. So the older people who vote on a regular basis are not going to vote in people who say, and by the way, I'm going to cut your Social Security by some percentage. They're just not going to do that. On the other hand, the younger people may say, why am I paying you a bunch of money for a system that's already functionally dead before I even get there? I would think there'd be a sense of resentment at some point of saying, we have to pay all these taxes to pay off the debt of Social Security, and we've already been told it won't exist by the time we get anywhere near retirement age?
Absolutely. We could see rising intergenerational resentment as we head into this depopulating future. So it's important that we maintain a strong emphasis on human dignity and view elderly people and young people alike as having intrinsic value. There was a professor at Yale, economics professor, a few years ago who suggested that the mass suicide of Japan's elderly population was the only solution to this problem. So it's important that we insist that people have dignity so that we don't see these more radical solutions being put forth to this problem.
It wasn't Peter Singer by any chance, was it? Because that guy seems to like death more than anybody else.
It was not him. It was an economics professor named Yusuke Narita.
And they were literally saying maybe old people should just kill yourselves off?
It was something that he suggested, but I believe he since walked back the claim. But it's just something that we have to be on the lookout for to ensure that this type of draconian attitude doesn't start to manifest more often.
It sounds like almost a modern-day equivalent of a modest proposal. It's like, okay, we're going to start eating people. This all goes nowhere good. Is there any point, and again, with the timelines that would be involved, should society start to encourage in some dramatic way people to have more kids?
Many governments have already implemented pronatal policies or pronatal incentives to try to encourage people to have more children. But the effects of these programs in countries like Canada, Poland, Sweden, etc., have only been very marginal increases in fertility at best. In some cases, they don't actually produce any increase in fertility. And that's because they are predicated on a false assumption, which is that a lack of affordability is the reason that people aren't having kids. If that were the case, you'd expect that high-income women would be having more children than low-income women, but it's actually the opposite. It's poor women who have more kids than rich women. So this is cultural. It reflects changing norms and expectations, secularization. It's much more complicated than many people make it out to be. And demographers and economists who study this issue seriously don't really believe that cost is what explains it all.
So what's your solution? What's your favorite, Aid?
Well, I view this as a problem that we're inevitably going to face. There is no immediate solution other than some kind of cultural revival where people start viewing children as a blessing in and of themselves and not as a burden. I think many modern developed countries have really taken that turn toward viewing children as a kind of burden. So there's just less pronatal assumptions nowadays, and this is happening everywhere, though. It's not just in rich countries. It's also happening in poor countries. So,
no doubt. Hey, Aidan, thank you very much. We're going to have you back. I know we're going to be talking about this more in the future. That's Aidan Grogan. Aidan.